The Cotswolds is an idyllic corner of southern England. J.R.R. Tolkien is said to have been inspired by the area's landscapes and architecture for his novel The Lord of the Rings. Villages such as Byberry, with its 17th century cottages and a lovely street called Arlington Row, and Burton-on-the-Water, nicknamed the Venice of the Cotswolds, attract hordes of tourists every year. The area's gardens are also a big tourist destination, especially Kiftsgate Court Gardens.
Things grow very well in England. We're lucky with the climate. I mean, we have good soil and then lots of rain, and cold winters but not very cold, and then warm summers but not very hot. So plants respond very well.
Kiftsgate Court Gardens is the creation of 3 generations of women gardeners. Anne Chambers gave up her job in London to return here a few years ago. The gardens are some of the few private gardens to be open to the general public. Visitors particularly like the exotic plants that thrive here because of the mild climate in the Cotswolds.
It's always been a farming community, so the farmers have looked after the hedges and the fields are beautifully kept, and people have planted a lot of trees. It's just, you've got the height, the views, the very attractive stone as well in the villages, because the Cotswold stone is that sort of yellowy, this sort of colour, which goes very well in the area. I just think we're just very lucky to live here.
In 1966, the Cotswolds was designated an area of outstanding natural beauty. Incidentally, one that the Romans also exploited.
Because these hills are so sort of healthy, and so the Romans came over and they grazed sheep all over the Cotswolds, and it produced the wool for the whole Roman Empire.
Elizabeth Ashcombe lives at Sudeley Castle not far from Winchcombe. The castle dates back to the 15th century and was possibly built on the site of a 12th century castle. It's one of the few castles in Britain that is still a residence. But it's open to the public too. Over the centuries, the castle passed in and out of the hands of the crown. Henry VIII's 6th wife is buried in the chapel.
His last wife, Catherine Parr, after Henry died, married Thomas Seymour, who then owned the castle, and this was her home, and this is where she lived and died, and she's buried here in the church, in the garden.
A perfect day out in the English countryside almost always includes a good old cup of tea. For example, here at Badger's Hall in Chipping Campden. It can be enjoyed at any time of the day, with or without milk, and preferably accompanied by dainty cucumber sandwiches or scones with strawberry jam and lashings of clotted cream.
I think it was introduced because in olden days, for instance the 17th century, it was too long between lunch and dinner. So the Duchess of Bedford decided she should have a few sweet treats. And then I think it's just grown into what you see today.
Broadway Tower is one of the most popular sites in the Cotswolds. It's over 16 meters tall and provides a wonderful view of the surroundings. But originally, it had no real purpose.
The Broadway Tower is a folly.
Broadway Tower is a folly. This dates back to the 18th century in English architecture, when a construction just expressed a love of life. It was a romantic idea to do something completely crazy to show one's wealth, but also just for fun, to do something that had no point or use.
Today, it makes perfect sense to climb Broadway Tower. On a clear day, visitors can see across 13 counties. And the view of the Cotswolds, the heart of England, is simply unbeatable.